Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the fastest growing podcast on IBM's YouTube channel, the Gregg and Joe Turbo Show. I'm your host, Joe, joined as always by my co host, Greg. Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Hello.
Hey, nice hoodie today. I like it. The orange.
Thanks.
Really nice.
Yeah, nice and bright for everyone. You know, it's a Friday afternoon. I want to keep it light and bright.
I like it. Today, we're kind of continuing on the theme of sort of expanding beyond just turbonomic and looking sort of more broadly at some of our other automation products. And one of those that is actually has a tight integration with Turbo and has had that integration for quite some time is Flexera. So today we're super lucky to have Michael Anthony joining us from Flexera. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well, man. Doing well.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having me.
much for taking the time. No one knows this obviously, but we've been planning this one for a while.
Right.
Yeah, and the nature of sales is that you never know what your schedule is going to be. So super happy that we were able to get you. But maybe we could start with a little bit about you. So who is Michael?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been with Flexera about 3 years. I was a major account manager focusing on the federal civilian government, and then took the VP role about 2 years ago. Prior to that, I was 20 years at SAP, selling as a direct seller into the federal market. So I had all the SAP portfolio, and spent a lot of time with data. We were actually acquired by SAP. I worked for a company called Business Objects. We actually used to do quite a bit of work with IBM. Prior to that, I was with a company called MicroStrategy, but always was around data. And so, Flexera lends itself to that. And so that's what attracted me to come to Flexera, and we can talk about that as the podcast goes on.
Sweet, appreciate that. So you're a tech lifer. You've been doing this for a long time.
Biology major, so I don't know how I got into IT, but
I was an English major, so I'm right there with you. I have no idea. I mean, Shakespeare comes in handy sometimes, I guess, in meetings, but not
yeah.
really.
I mean, if you quote it, the customer picks up on it.
Yeah, exactly. But okay, well, I mean, that's awesome. And again, I know Greg and I have been chatting about this, and I think this kind of probably goes for a lot of our IBM counterparts is, we have a general idea of what Flexera is and what Flexera does, but I guess maybe you can just start by kind of just giving your outline of, I guess, what the platform is and what value, I guess, it provides. Why would someone want to buy it?
Sure. And the simplest way to think about it, it's business intelligence for IT executives. So if you think of BI, dashboards, reporting, analytics, all that type of stuff, usually, at least where I spent my career was focused on the actual business lines, whether it was case management, customs and border protection, maybe it was HR, trying to find, better analytic techniques within those areas, better reporting, all those things. This is the same thing, but it's for IT people. So when you think of Flexera, think of it as a technology intelligence platform that delivers accurate data, has a tremendous amount of automation that enables customers, our IT executives and customers and practitioners, to get better IT situational awareness around their environment. So looking at things like risk, cost, and usage of IT assets, and providing that intelligence about that, so that they can make better decisions on what to do with that IT. Is it migrate it? Is it move it to the cloud? Is it reduce it? Is it increase it? So when, the net is, it's intelligence around the technology that someone is invested in. And how do you get value out of that? And I always talk to people about, if you really want to simplify it, it's the questions you would ask yourself is, with Flexera, is what do I have? So you have Flexera, your customer. Now I want the computer to tell me, what do I have? Where am I at risk? How much is it costing me? What value am I getting out of this stuff? What should I do with it? It was like those 5 things. It's like, that's what you're trying to understand. And that's sort of the capabilities that we provide.
Does that only apply to I'm going to ask ignorant questions. My ignorance is going to show. Does that only apply to for example, off the shelf products or licensing for that? Or is there any sort of intelligence around doing app rationalization for your own products that you've built that are not, COTS products?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do COT software, hardware, and then open source. So we have so the real thing that really drives Flexera is the data sets. So Flexera over the years has the world's largest data sets on technology assets, things like life cycle, power consumption, end of life, end of support, vulnerabilities. So that's kind of like the technology intelligence. Then they have license intelligence, very large libraries on the licensing, whether it's IBM, Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, etc., Adobe. We have a tremendous library of intelligence around licensing. And then the same goes for the cloud. So we understand the different cloud providers and we understand the costs of those different services. And so when you have those three things, you can go across the whole landscape and say, what do I have? What's the risk? How much is it costing me? What should I do with it?
Yeah.
I have this application. Should I move it to the cloud or not, based on cost and risk and all this stuff? So,
yeah, that's interesting. You've already taken me from my tiny little pigeonhole of what I thought Flexera was, which is just license entitlements, and you've taken it and you've expanded it beyond. So my head is expanded now. Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing is, Flexera, it's kind of funny. It's like there's two businesses. There's a business, Flexera is the mothership, but under that you have Flexera and Revenera. Revenera is a company that does nothing but work with software manufacturers to help them bring their products and their IP to market. So it understands like code, it understands how to license things. The beauty of that is they have a product called Code Insight, which does nothing but look at open source code, detect vulnerabilities and issues with it. And then also if there's any IP licensing that goes with it, you think of like Java. Remember back in the days when, I don't know if it was I can't remember so long ago, but they were going to sue everybody because everybody was using Java.
Sue everybody.
Yeah. And no one knew that the little licensing, fine print was like, you can only do it this way. You can't distribute it that way.
Yeah.
So we bring that to the federal market as well, a product called Code Insight, which can look at all custom developed applications and kind of create that ingredients list or SBOM of what's being used. And then also read the contractual language of how you distribute that open source software, which has the implications.
The ultimate CYA right there.
Yeah, right.
Let's just be safe. Better safe than sorry.
That's right.
So that library and that intelligence you're talking about, and again, my understanding is still pretty elementary, but is that you referring to? Is it Technopedia? Is that the sort of the library that you're speaking of? And I've heard something about it. I think it's a really sort of awesome part of Flexera. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Technopedia in a little more detail.
Sure. So think of it like an encyclopedia of anything you'd want to know around technology in terms of life cycle, power, vulnerabilities, risk. And so now we're calling this the technology intelligence platform because we're taking the Technopedia, we're taking the licensing libraries, and we're taking some of the cloud libraries and putting it all together into what we call a technology intelligence platform. And that you'll see that branding from Flexera coming out in the market, and we're already there, but you'll see some big splashes around that because really what we're saying is we're a data company. We have proprietary data sets on technology and costs and licensing and open source and all the implications on cloud and everything. So we want to provide that to customers, whether it's a ServiceNow customer, whether it's a standalone customer, whether it's someone in enterprise architecture who has tools and they need to understand what's in my environment, what's the life cycle, do I have any risk? Or it's a financial person who says, hey, we buy all this software. I don't know what's redundant. I don't know how much we're paying. Should we be using that? We always buy premium, but you look into the system and everyone's using the standard edition. Why are we buying premium?
Right.
And so I think the value prop, and the other thing is, we are a certified replacement for ILMT for IBM customers. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there where we can go into a customer that has ILMT and is doing licensing with IBM. And you always hear the gripes, even from the IBM folks, of like customers find that really hard to use. We can replace it with Flexera, still get your certified licensing metrics, but also be able to look at like Oracle, Microsoft, other vendors in the environment, and could we reduce spend from one of those and then apply it to some innovative stuff that IBM's bringing to market?
Right. Yeah. That comes with the platform, right? I mean, that intelligence is built in. That's not like an add-on thing that a customer has to sort of purchase in addition to. And then I guess how often is that updated? So like I would assume that's the thing that kind of allows us or allows a customer to be quicker, right? To make quicker decisions because all the hard work's happening in the background already for them, and they're just getting the answers.
Yeah, so there's probably, I mean, the data sets, enormous, 100,000 manufacturers in there. I think it's updated about 5,000 times a day with new software, new license metrics, new things that are coming out into the market. And we have a team of over 100 people that just curate that data day in, and like that's their job. Then they use AI tools and screen scraping and communication with the different vendors and partnerships and stuff like that. And so we have a lot of that data, and we just serve it out. So whatever application you have, you can ingest that technology intelligence data to enable your efforts to work more seamlessly and more accurately. And we get a lot of that where people say, oh, I have something sounds kind of like that. I do asset management or I do license management.
Yeah.
But they they do it at a very high level, which is better than nothing. But get the devil's in the details when it comes to licensing and how you're deploying it. And
it's expensive. Licensing is not cheap. I mean, it is. Yeah, you're right. Doing something is better than nothing, but that's still leaves a lot of room for improvement, right? And so, that's you'd mentioned AI, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know like obviously AI is like a big topic. It's a big topic at IBM.
Yeah.
Do you foresee AI playing a bigger role in Flexera as a platform moving forward, or in the future? I'm sure you guys are probably developing something around that, but
yeah, we are. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's critical. And I think the one that comes to mind is with licensing and procurement documents and contracts. So being able to go in there and read all that stuff ahead of time, and categorize it and structure it, and then being able to ingest peculiarities in licensing information into Flexera to make it better, faster. So that's one area. We already have recommendations for software. So we do have, about 100 million different algorithms that, matching algorithms we run in Flexera to not only find what type of software it actually is, depending on how it's deployed and the computer name and the IP and the host and all that stuff. We can kind of determine what it is, but doing that even faster and even better is certainly going to be, the key. And we do have a couple pilot projects internally that we're working on, but I think you'll see it a lot around the licensing, which is great for IBM because that's what we're talking.
right.
A lot of times that's what we're talking about.
Right. Well, I guess in talking about working with IBM customers, and we've actually we met at a customer site. That's how we got connected. But again, I think, and we kind of talked about this before we started recording, but before IBM acquired a lot of these automation products, right? We all were independent platforms, and we all in some way positioned ourselves against each other, right? As one would in the competitive landscape of IT. But the reality is, Turbo is very specific and good at what it does, and Flexera is really good at what it does, and Apptio and the various Apptio platforms are very good at what they do. But I do know that a lot of times there's confusion specifically around like Apptio and Flexera, and saying like, oh, they do the same thing, or I have one, so I don't need the other. And so I wonder if you could just speak about kind of how you deal with that, because I'm sure you run into that, and maybe for the folks watching, like what's a good way to kind of set that straight, I guess.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the main thing that differentiates us from everything is the data sets, and we talked about those. So having detailed intelligence on ... versions of software is what we specialize in. So providing that detail up, So for example, like Aptio is a fantastic product. A lot of people have it, and it'll tell you, you know, the cost pool. So it'll say, hey, you're spending 10 million on Amazon. It's not going to tell you, hey, you have 33% of your 10 million spend is in reserve instances that don't even, you know, aren't used that much, but you're paying for them. You know, and you have a lot of backup services that you're not even using, but you're paying for those. So taking 10 million and breaking it down by very, you know, discrete buckets of IT spend, that just makes Aptio better, because the customer is going to look at Aptio and say, 10 million, okay, give me the details. Well, we can't really give you the details. With Flexera, you're going to say, here's exactly how that 10 million, almost like a checkbook, right? This is exactly how it's broken up. And you know, and I think so. There's some great use cases with Aptio to help the customer be a lot smarter. With Turbo, I see it as being able to understand who's using the software, how much it's costing, looking at life cycle and saying, hey, you know, we've got to upgrade these 10 things within the next 9 months. Are we going to do that? Should we do that? And then having all that intelligence and then having that power Turbo to actually make that change or upgrade that equipment. And here's the business case of why we made that change in Turbo. Your end of life, you're paying a lot of money for it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we just need to figure out, you know, customer targets, and then go try to figure out in our head, hey, does this add value to what they're trying to do? What are they doing today?
Right. And look for synergies as opposed to overlap between the platforms, because there is some slight overlap between all of the products, right?
Yeah.
But it's very slight. And I think what happens is a lot of people tend to focus on that little overlap and miss the big synergy that exists between all of these platforms.
Yeah. So if I boiled it down, I would say the depth and breadth of the technology data, that's the number one thing. So we're going to give you all the details underneath whatever tool you're using. And then I think like the matching and the automation and the algorithms, the matching algorithms are unreal. So, you know, 98% matching, finding what's in a customer's environment conclusively, and then enriching it with lifecycle data, enriching it with vulnerability data. So a lot of tools can do discovery. We see it all the time. Hey, we're doing discovery. Great. Fantastic. We want to enrich that discovery data and what you find. We just recently had a federal customer, and they were using, they weren't using the normalization from us. They were just using the data, the Technopedia, which is a distinct, used to be sold as a distinct product, and they're a longtime customer. But they were doing discovery, and then they were bringing all this stuff in, and they couldn't match up like 50% of it. When we took Flexera over there and put it up against this data set, 50% of the data they were getting was junk. So they had 2 FTEs looking through. There's millions and millions of rows of data. Half of it was junk, but they didn't know that because they didn't have the intelligence to understand, hey, these language packs don't really matter when we're doing lifecycle updates or licensing, you know. So you can save a ton of money doing it.
Imagine being those people whose job it was to look through that, and then you bring in a platform like, oh no, actually, yeah, that's done now. You're like, what? But for the last 3 months, I've just been. I think I broke my eyes. I think I can't even. Yeah. What's happening? Yeah.
You know, I went to college to like work a mouse on a spreadsheet.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
No, but that's a great point though, because I think, right, like when it comes to cost savings and cost avoidance, which everyone's always interested in, right? It's not just the sort of the hard IT costs, like the licensing costs that where you can save. It's also, it sounds like, in the ability to sort of leverage the automation that Flexera provides and the intelligence that it brings to the table, saving on salaries as well, right? That you can now redeploy those full-time employees to other projects, right? They don't need to be spending their day sort of combing through everything and you know, being miserable. That sounds terrible.
Absolutely.
Sounds
That's
terrible.
a big part of the ROI. It's the productivity and opportunity cost, and everyone's so focused on productivity nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's always a major ROI savings right there. Productivity, redistributing resources to more, you know, mission effective work.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I heard you saying earlier that one of the use cases you can apply Flexera to in a state of whatever IT that you're applying it to would be to do like what software composition analysis, right? What's on this box? What's on it that's open source? You know, am I in compliance with how I've distributed this, right? In my travels through the IT world, I've heard of people using something called Black Duck for doing that. How does, and I'm going to put you on the spot, how does Flexera stack up against something like Black Duck?
I know it's always intriguing how the people come up with these names.
Yeah.
You know? I've never heard of Black Duck.
Okay.
But the one thing that's differentiated with Code Insights is it actually gets into the actual contract language and understands the licensing part of it. So I think a lot of people can do scanning and kind of tell you what kind of components are in there and things like that. So this Code Insight builds SBOMs, software bill of materials, and other products do that. But where we differentiate is in that licensing piece. We understand the licensing, you know, better than any tool out there, and so that's really the differentiator there.
So you've got code that's scanning through EULAs?
Yeah.
Really?
Exactly. Yes. Yep.
Oh wow! All right, because nobody reads them.
Nobody reads those.
I know, it's terrible. And they're not fun to read, but yeah, so we do that extremely well.
Good.
And that's
All right.
that is where we differentiate. And then we also get a lot of interest from or at least on the commercial side, not so much the government, on managing SBOMs. So they're getting these software bill of materials from all the software vendors. We have a repository to store that correctly and view it and analyze it. And then if you think about it, once you get that from a vendor, then imagine taking the technology intelligence platform and injecting all additional enrichment into that data. Hey, well, what's the life cycle of that? What are the known vulnerabilities of that? Where did it come from? Did it come from China, or where's the subcomponent made? So like getting all that detailed information just helps the customer, you know.
That's
become
super
more fluent.
detailed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that's typically something that is leveraged? And I know you said it's more for executives, but do you think that that's something that's leveraged by like application development teams when they're trying to put something out, like a new product, right? I've got to go to market with this product. I'm including an open source whatever in this product when I put it together. Throw Flexera at it to make sure that I'm good to go to market with this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great use case. And particularly, I was thinking in government, in like all these DevSecOps areas, in places where they build custom code. That's where we want to take this into. I mean, it's relatively new this year to the Salesforce, you know, our team. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at everywhere that builds its own software. They probably do have some type of scanning, but do they understand the distribution? Right. And so if it gets into a weapon system or it gets into some other system and they think they're deploying it one way and then it goes out deployed a different way, that's, you know, could be a massive
That's a problem.
or lawsuit or issue. Yeah.
So I was just thinking about it. So I mean, and maybe I'm sure maybe this has been written or someone's already said this, but it's the first time I've thought of it. But I'm curious to get your take on it. So just in terms of like how, again, like going back to like how we can best position like these things together as sort of you know, not competitors but as friends. It's really like the trifecta, right? Like in my mind, just in hearing you talk about it, it's like obviously I know Turbo well, and Turbo is all about performance, right? Like workload performance, making sure that things are getting the resources they need when they need them. And then Apptio is really sort of centered on cost, right? Like let us help you to sort of understand your costs and track your cost, tagging, all that sort of stuff. And it sounds like Flexera is really the compliance piece, right? So it's like performance, cost, and compliance, and literally, you know, every business you need all three of those.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
And that's kind of like maybe oversimplifying it a bit, but
No,
just in
think
terms
so.
of like conversations, I think it could be a good way to sort of approach customers in terms of like how to think about them differently.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like Flexera is informing Turbo. It's informing the customer. So if hey, let's upgrade this. Okay, well, what's the financial impact of that? Or Flexera says, hey, this needs to be upgraded. Okay, Turbo, go upgrade it. Right. And then, hey, do we have enough budget? Well, let's feed that back up into Apptio to see. They have the top level. Here comes some detailed lower level. That's going to change that top level. We do have budget. Okay, go do it, Turbo. You know, so it really is peanut butter jelly and some bread.
There you
Kind of
go.
coming together.
Now, which one is
Delightful
which then?
sandwich.
Yeah, I know. I'm like thinking about food.
So I guess it just, kind of sticking with the sales side. Who are, I know you kind of already mentioned it, right? Sort of the IT executives, but I guess when sellers are out in the wild, right? Some of the IBM sellers, and they're having conversations with customers, and maybe they're talking about Turbo or Aptio. What are some things that we should be listening for, or what are some good questions that we can ask to sort of qualify, whether or not Flexera? I mean, obviously it's a good fit, but we have to get the customer to think that too. So, what are some questions? Who are some personas? What are some things to listen for that can kind of help people to be better at uncovering those opportunities?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we typically look at like enterprise. There's a couple of them, but enterprise architects, the EA people, always interested in the technology lifecycle data and what's on the network, what's coming on that shouldn't be on, how many things are in compliance with versioning, end of life, those type of things. So those are always good people to gravitate towards. The other group is like asset management people, obviously. Their job is to make sure that they're in compliance with assets. Finance people like IT finance, they're always looking for ways to reallocate funds or, you know, how much are we spending on this type of technology? Why do we have 53 of these different versions in the environment? Or doesn't that cost money? So it's kind of like EA finance. CISOs are really coming on strong for us. We're getting a lot of interest, and a lot of the projects that started out with, hey, we're just going to look at technology and see where we are and get a status and how much we're spending. The cyber people have come and said, well, wait a minute, that's interesting data. So you've rolled up CVEs and you add threat scores and you add life cycle data, and you're actually showing us where the attack surface is very risky. We want that data. We'll fund you if you keep doing that Flexera stuff. We need that data. So we're starting to see it go into risk models a lot. And it's pretty crazy. It's like the cyber has really picked up. Everyone wants to know that data now because they understand that the attack surface, the lion doesn't go and kill the healthy buffalo, right? It goes after the feeble old one that's been neglected or whatever. And same with software and versions. So we're getting a lot of that. I always ask just basic questions of like, hey, do you have visibility into everything you have? No, I don't. Hey, we use ServiceNow.
Even if they say yes, they're like, well, we'll just plug it in and just see.
You'd be surprised.
Like, we have 53 of these, right? Who knew? Right. Yeah. Right.
Or they'll say we have ServiceNow, right? And that collects maybe 50% of what you really need. So I'm like, hey, well, having 100% of 50% is still 50% visibility. Just because you don't
checks out. That's good math.
Yeah.
Not even good math, but it makes sense to me.
And then just talking to those people about what do they have? Do they have accurate? Are they sure the data is accurate? How do they plan for life cycles? Do they know? How do they prevent unbudgeted requests from going up from IT? The finance people can't stand that, right? Hey, we need to upgrade this. It's $3 million. Well, didn't you know it's been out of date for a year? Well, why didn't you tell me last year?
No,
we didn't know.
Right. I know now, and now you.
Yeah. And I think between Flexera and IBM, there's a bunch of questions and like battle cards we have for you guys. If you haven't seen them, I can send some of them after this. That has the personas and the questions and kind of the problems. But everyone's got this problem. I mean, it's
right. I
didn't even know about this market until I came to Flexera. That's what intrigued me. I was like, oh my, people really don't know what they have and really don't know how much they're spending. Yeah. And I think what we've seen too, and like a lot of these large agencies, is they do ELAs. And it's like, well, why did you do an ELA for SAP? Well, we don't really know what we're going to use and how often we're going to use it. And it's too much of a headache to do compliance. And now we're starting to get a lot of those customers who had done ELAs to come back to us to say, we know we're not using all this stuff and we're paying, 8 figures, 9 figures a year. And then we go and look at it and say, yeah, you really don't need all of that. Let's reallocate that to something else. And so that's one of the good things about, working with you guys is we replace ILMT. We can show them some value with IBM and then also look at other products in the environment to reallocate to more innovative stuff that you guys offer. I think it's a big win. It's just we need to press on that a lot.
Save money, buy more IBM stuff. I like it. This is good.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah, I'll give you one of the use cases that's near and dear to my heart. I work on it with almost every customer I talk to. Is Turbonomics got this idea of what we call the use case called license control, and what that does is, for example, let's say you've licensed a certain number of physical machines to run virtual machines on, and those virtual machines we're going to consume entitlements from those physical machines, right? Turbonomics says, if you give me this scope of, let's say, Windows VMs, and you tell me that those Windows VMs have to run on these specific licensed hosts, Turbonomic will place them onto those hosts and condense down the workloads to the least number of hosts required to run and meet that demand of all the VMs that are going to run on it. And it'll flex in and out. Yeah, Flexera. It'll flex in and out across that range of hosts that you've defined. And when you need more performance, it'll spin up another host and add the VMs to it. When you don't, it spins it down. And that gives you a good idea when you say, I've licensed 10 hosts. I've only ever used 5, maybe a 6 once or twice in there. You look at your statistics and you find where that lies.
Sure.
I could live with just licensing these 6 hosts and be fine with the 5 that it really needs. And that's a pretty key core, well, not core use case. That's one of the advanced use cases we've got in our customer journey. But what Turbonomic does do is it'll integrate with Flexera to say, give me all the entitlements you know about Flexera. Right. Give me all the VMs and the hosts in the environment those entitlements are applied to and that are consuming those entitlements. And oh, by the way, because you've got the FNMS agent out there in the world, I know where they're living today, and I know what that makeup is of this VM is on this host, and I'll tell that to Turbonomic and build the policies for Turbonomic automatically to say, awesome. Instead of you having to specify these 10 hosts and these VMs, well, I already know all these VMs are Windows VMs, so it makes that group and it adds that to the policy. And I already know it's on these hosts today from the FNMS agent, so build that into the policy. Done. And
yeah,
you plug it in, you hit the button, it creates the policies, and now it starts to condense your environment. And now the FNMS agent discovers, oh, you're only on those 5 hosts? Well, guess what, Turbo? Your new policy is to use those 5 hosts. And you don't have to go through all the gymnastics of figuring out how many, where they live, what they do. And it automates that whole process of configuring Turbo to help you to gain better insight, number one. But number 2, also go back to your vendors and say, you know what? I don't really need 10 licenses anymore. I only need 5.
Right, exactly. That's a good one. And I've seen it even in the demos where we do, like I was talking about, those recommendations for licensing from the FNMS agent will look and say, hey, you're not using this. You don't make the recommendation. That's almost like a justification for doing a turbo action, right? Like, hey, you're using it this way. We think you'll save $300,000 if you use it this way and have the same performance. I mean, and then that just justifies, hey, go take this action with Turbo. And here's the justification why. I think just working closer together with you guys will help a lot.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Completely agree. Have you seen any, things in the news lately, right? Obviously the Broadcom stuff is pretty big news and obviously it's pretty ubiquitous in terms of like customer base, like everyone has some VMware. Have you seen that people coming to Flexera, or are you guys actively going out and talking to customers? Because it sounds like a perfect opportunity to kind of help them to reduce that footprint and hopefully reduce that price hike that's coming.
Yeah, that's going to be an ugly one because Broadcom's they're going to make their money and they know it, and they know that people are stuck with it, and they can increase it 10%. People will cry, but they'll pay it up. So we've actually had a lot of customers ask us about that. We're actually building a license position around VMware and Broadcom. I think it's about to be unleashed in the next couple of weeks. I was actually talking to a government customer the other day. They have a whole task force. It's a big department on what to do about this
Yeah.
because they have VMware everywhere, right? And they know it's coming, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" They're like, "We have a whole task force on what to do."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've
They don't
heard,
have Flexera, but they're going to buy it, right? They're
Yeah.
I'm like, "Hey, that's a use case."
I've heard some pretty massive increases, like nightmare stories from customers saying, "Look, I need your help with this." So,
Yeah.
but interestingly enough, and this is something that I've just picked up on, like in the last 3 days. I've seen a lot in the news about Broadcom sort of like pedaling that back a little bit, like, "Oh, we didn't realize this was going to be such a big
You
impact."
guys are mad about that?
Yeah, yeah. This
Yeah.
is really going to put you out, huh? Well, maybe we'll walk that back a little bit. So I think they're taking a little bit of a softer position on it. It might just be, well, we understand you're in a pickle. We'll give you another 3 months, another 6 months, another 12 months, or whatever. But guess what? We're still putting you on a subscription model, right? I haven't looked into it deeply enough, but I do know that that's one of the things that they're talking about is potentially extending for customers who really need it.
Yeah, they probably will pull back a little bit, but then it'll eventually get in there.
No,
At some point, it'll
that bill's
slowly
coming
move.
due, whether it's now or they give you 6 months. It's happening. Like that is for sure. But also
It's
too,
like it's like your energy bill. It's like
yeah,
I don't know how much kilowatt I'm paying now versus last year. I'm just gonna pay
no,
it, but
yeah. Every month I'm shocked. I'm like, well, how is
yeah,
my bill so expensive?
I
And
turn
I'm
off all the
upset.
lights. It's
But
dark
then
as
I
hell in here.
immediately pay it so that I still have lights the next day.
Yeah,
Here I
But I'm
am
mad
sitting
about
all month long underneath the blanket, shivering,
it.
and I get the
Unbelievable.
bill and it's still higher. What's going
we
on?
got candles everywhere, and it's still
Ugh,
$200 a month.
seriously, crazy. But that's actually like, and again, just kind of thinking out loud here, like in terms of how to position or good opportunities to kind of have that conversation for the IBM side could be right around that, right? Because we're having these Broadcom conversations with platforms like Turbo, right? But again, solving two different problems, both important,
Mhm.
but maybe the more complete solution, right, to that problem is a joint solution with Flexera and
That's a
Turbo.
great point.
Let us optimize. Let us control the licensing. Let us help you to understand like how much you're actually spending, how much you actually have, how much you actually need, and then let's go ahead and optimize that with Turbo. I mean, I think that's kind of
Yeah, that's a
perfect,
great
really.
one. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like fact-based optimization. I mean, I know
Yep.
it's probably a mouthful, but getting the cost of hey, let's go do this, and here's the cost of that. Here's what's going to cost. Here's what you can budget. Why are we doing this? Well, here's why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Lay that out in front of the customer. And I think if you're looking at targets, I mean, the best target. I mean, there's like four main sort of areas: IT operations people, right? I'm just saying generally, like logistics, inventory management, IT operations, whatever you want to call it. If that's a category, those people are dying for visibility into what they have, and it's a cyber risk thing, right? So they worry more about around risk. Um, you get into like finance and procurement, and people who do ELAs and license and IT finance, they're more interested in like the costing of that. Um, CISOs is another good area. Anybody in security, yeah, they may have Axonius, they may have all these other tools, but they're not enriching it. There's enrichment that we provide out of our data sets that can add value to what those tools do. So we're seeing a lot of interest in those areas. And then again, like the DevSecOps, people that build custom apps, maybe more mission focused stuff. Being able to look at the software bill of materials and then enrich that with additional information around vulnerabilities, risk, and IP distribution and possible licensing issues with that, just to keep the customer safe. Right? Our thing is just we're trying to keep you risk free.
Yeah.
Financial risk, cyber risk.
Yeah.
That's the key word that I've been hearing through this whole conversation is risk.
Yeah, I mean that's what really stirs people emotions.
Yes. Yep.
It's risk, and it's oh gosh, if I could have prevented something and I was just I'll get to it later, and it's a
Yep.
major thing, I'm done.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
either want to prevent pain or I want to minimize pain that I'm already feeling, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's I mean, and again, I don't think this is kind of the perfect time for these security concerns and conversations because it is becoming more and more prevalent. And I think I read like 2 weeks ago there was a backdoor that was uncovered that was potentially going to affect everything. So yeah, you can never be too short. You gotta, better to CYA and not have to worry about it.
And I think that the conversation changed maybe like 5, 10 years ago. People were like cyber, I don't, or security or
Yeah, it was like two guys in the corner. They were like, yeah, those,
yeah,
those.
like I don't care about that stuff.
Yeah,
It's not
whatever.
affecting my revenue. Now they see what's happened to casinos when they're out of commission. for
Ransomware
years,
stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
hospitals and ransomware and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And they're like, we've got to pay attention to this stuff. We have to know what we own and the risk and how much it costs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if it's out of support and we're still 3 years later still using it, that's a problem. You know what I mean? Hasn't been updated in 18 months is a problem.
That raises an interesting question. I'll give you an example. Turbonomic, right? Our agreement or our support agreement that we have with customers is you get support for N-2, right?
Mm.
So if you're on 8.12 today and we released 8.12 today and you're on 8.4, you don't get support from our support team. You got to upgrade first. So like, is there some way in Flexera to comprehend that and create a rule that says for this product, if your version is N-2 or better, you're out of compliance, you better get this thing upgraded before you move on?
Yeah, absolutely. There's we call it market version in Technopedia in the technology intelligence platform. So it'll list market versions of software, different than point releases, right? So if you're releasing 5, 6, 7, but you skip 9 and go to 10, if you're a customer, you're like, where's 9? We can't find 9. Oh no. And maybe you search for it. Maybe you put people to say, what did we do here? And there's a big research effort on why did we not go to 9, and people don't realize 9's not in the market. They skip.
It doesn't even exist.
Right. And so we provide like little tidbits of intel like that. Like here are the market versions aligned with your so we can always look at that and say what's N-2, -3, -1.
Cool.
So we can definitely help with that.
Good.
That's awesome. Well, look, guys, it's Friday, and I don't want to keep everyone here too late because hopefully everyone's almost done with their day and looking forward to a nice weekend. But Michael, again, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to join us today. And again, I know it's never easy to kind of align calendars, and we did it. And thank you for that.
No, thank you guys for having me.
Anytime.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
And I am curious. I know you said you guys are putting together some marketing around the Broadcom, some messaging around the Broadcom stuff. If you could share that with me when you have it, that would be great. And I can go ahead and share that with the IBM folks, if that's okay. Of course, I don't want to.
Absolutely. No, and I really appreciate you bringing me on and talking with you guys. Has been great. I'm going to be happy to do more of these. If there's more like questions from the field, like, hey, let's get into some specific stuff, or if there's opportunities that people are working and we just want to brainstorm and ideate around some ideas, go bring some stuff to a customer and see if it sticks. Take Aptio, take Turbo, take Flexera, and just go see. I'm totally game for that. And a lot of times the demos show really well. So if you have getting back to ILMT, if your customer's got ILMT, they're going to love Flexera, the look and feel. And then secondly, if we could, there's integrated demos. I've seen some that have Aptio and Turbo and Flexera together. I don't know if the SEs did it or the companies did it together, but showing that could be really powerful for a customer because it's the whole picture, like you guys.
Yeah. Don't take my word for it. Look at it yourself. Right. That always helps.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Our job is to make it sound good. Let's just be honest. You know what I mean? So like, if you can see it for yourself, that helps. But yeah, I think that would be amazing, and I'm sure folks will have questions. So we'll definitely keep in touch, and we'll get you on again. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely, be great.
Yeah. You guys have a great Friday.
And you too. And again, thank you everyone for watching. As always, more information on what we talked about today or anything we've talked about ever on this podcast, check out our community pages, check out Seismic. All the sales kits are out there for you as well. And with that, we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.